Is this it? This is what I got all those ass whoopings for?
When Cartoon Network had Martin Luther King Jr. throw out more N-words than I'd ever heard in my life, I sat in stunned silence. And I want to be clear that I am the whitest of white guys, so please don't fire me.
Fired? For what?
For being an irresponsible white person.
But that's just it. I don't want to be an irresponsible white person. So what better way to work on that than to learn about representation via the history of my favorite artistic medium? So let's learn about the Boondocks, how various folks around the world have been represented in anime and animation, and about a few artists who are trying to make that better. The Boondocks was an American animated series that premiered in the fall of 2005 as a part of Cartoon Network's adult content block, Adult Swim. And prior to its Japanese anime-styled incarnation, it was a serialized comic strip of the same name, written and drawn by McGruder, that delivered as much humor as it did scathing social commentary. And this is your obligatory content warning. What is social commentary to some will seem a personal attack to others. But if anything touched here might make someone mad enough to leave a nasty dissertation in the comments, I would invite them to close the video and go touch some grass. Are they gone? Just you and me then, cool person. That's good, because main character and black activist Huey Freeman opens the series with some dark truths for white people.
Jesus was black, Ronald Reagan was the devil, and the government is lying about 9/11.
And like any good satire, Huey represents just one facet of the Boondocks diamond. His younger brother Riley is a caricature of urban youth, obsessed with street cred, being gangsta, Jesus, this is hard. And Robert Freeman, their granddad and caretaker, represents the old guard. He sat with Rosa Parks, marched with Martin Luther King Jr., served in World War II, and is settled with his grandsons in a rich, predominantly white, suburb. The series takes a fair jab at pretty much everyone. Riley's first line is about the way that white people talk.
They say the whole word like this.
And during a surprise visit from the bank owner, Granddad assumes that Mr. Onceler, because he's white, would love some cheese.
Did you just offer me cheese?
Yes, I did.
I'd love some cheese, thank you.
Okay, look, some stereotypes exist for a reason. And there is commentary on other communities as well. One episode has Granddad open a soul food restaurant, which leads to a joke about the movie Soul Food.
And what does the family do after she dies? They get together for a Sunday dinner and eat the same food that just killed Big Mama.
As an Italian, I have some sympathy there. My wife's Sunday sauce takes it a day off of your life expectancy, and it is so worth it. But because of that, the restaurant episode is the only non-white commentary I feel comfortable getting into the details on. You'll just have to go and watch the show for yourself. See? Responsible white person. So this begs the question that I never like to answer. Is the Boondocks anime? And like so many other series, it depends on what your definition of anime is. If that definition is that it has to be created, or at least animated, in Japan, then the answer is no. The Boondocks was animated by several South Korean studios in an anime style. Although Madhouse, the Japanese studio that animated Frieren Beyond Journey's End, Overlord, Trigun, among many others, was slated to come in for Season 2, but the deal fell through. The New York Post article that is cited as a dead link, so take that with a grain of salt. McGruder has said in multiple interviews that the series is in the Japanese anime style, its action sequences and introduction pulling from the works of Shinichiro Watanabe, specifically Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo. And there's plenty of other non-Japanese influence too. Aisha Tyler guest starred in the episode Attack of the Killer Kung Fu Wolf Bitch, with references to the video game Mortal Kombat.
Finish him. Luna wins.
And frequent use of the word kumite.
Did you say kumite?
Uh-huh, the kumite.
What's a kumite?
Harkening back to the kung fu movies like Enter the Dragon and Bloodsport. But what if you're looking for minority representation in animation, but not necessarily through American social commentary in an anime style. Historically, you're going to be disappointed. We're getting into some inappropriate and downright offensive animation here. Guys, not me, come on! Let's ease into it with my own ancestors, the Italians in Disney's Lady and the Tramp. These boppity-boopy icons ultimately make me chuckle, but that's probably because 7/8 of me isn't offended. My wife's grandfather, an Italian immigrant that escaped fascism as a young man, might have a different opinion. And while I don't want to gloss over the racism of those damned cats in this movie, Disney's not alone in some early to mid-20th century Asian stereotyping.
Over here are honorable aircraft spotter.
And while not his animated works, Dr. Seuss had some troubling political cartoons against the Japanese before and during the war. The Grinch is downright angelic by comparison. Black representation hasn't fared well in animation history either. Despite the House of Mouse's best efforts to retroactively edit the piece, Disney's Fantasia has been tainted by the caricature that is Sunflower, the Black Centaur. Disney's faux pas, which is fancy speak for racist blunder, came after Celebrity Productions' 1935 short, Little Black Sambo, based on the 1899 book of the same name, and shouldn't need an explanation of why it's awful. And I know that doesn't cover everyone's representation, good and bad, but I could dedicate 20 minutes of this video to this and barely skim the surface.
It's a pretty brutal job sifting through all that darkness.
And it's not like there haven't been any improvements. Disney and other companies have started putting up content warnings or contextualizing these kinds of stories, and improvements through more diverse storytelling, like Static Shock, The Proud Family, and more recently, Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. But when it comes to anime, the popularity in America started ramping up in the 70s, so surely things are more progressive there, right? Well, one of the most frequently cited problematic depictions is in Dragon Ball Z's Mr. Popo. While defenders point out he's a deity, and not a man, one could counter that he's a deity that takes care of Kami by gardening, which is not a good look here in the United States. To the point where Team 4-Star, who made DBZ Abridged, a parody edit of the original series, leaned into that particular insight hard.
Isn't that weird, black man?
Yeah, almost as weird as what's gonna happen if you call me that again.
Black man.
Shaman King's Choco Love seems obvious as far as name and design, and I doubt that's the recency bias of having just researched Little Black Sambo. The reboot did give him a redesign, but I'm not sure I'm qualified to determine if that redeems it or not. And I think it's important to remember, especially in the context of a dub, that most anime characters are Japanese. Any actor playing these roles will likely have another layer of representation to worry about as they go to work. Though there are definitely series that involve non-Japanese stories. Gunslinger Girl comes to mind, taking place in Italy and dealing with Italian politics, or Vinland Saga, which is basically a revenge story with Wuxia Vikings. And of course, the My Anime List favorite, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, which is clearly a story about a Weimar Republic-esque country and its atrocities towards its own world's minorities. It's a happy show. And that's not including Hafu characters, meaning half Japanese and half some other ethnicity. Fruits Basket has half Japanese, half German Momiji, Auron High School Host Club swaps German for French in Tamaki, and we know this because of their blonde hair, because all Europeans have blonde hair, right? There are industry leaders that try to make anime more inclusive at large. Tide Kubo, author of Bleach, sports several non-Japanese characters. Yoroichi and Tosen come immediately to mind. Oh, and it's Mexican Hafu, Sato, Chad, Yasutora. And it makes sense that McGruder would find inspiration for the Boondocks in Watanabe's Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo, the latter of which explores real Japanese history and its minorities, like the Ryukyu Islanders and the Ainu people, through a mashup of hip-hop and Ronin Samurai. And that's not to discount Carol and Tuesday, a newer Watanabe work set in the near future about two musicians as they enter the music industry. The music in that anime is created by several international artists from the real world, in various styles, from various backgrounds. But where do we go from here? Is there any hope for anime becoming more inclusive as it grows in worldwide popularity? Is Afro Samurai voiced by Samuel L. Jackson, the peak of inclusive anime? What if I told you that there are black artists working with and in Japan on anime? LaShawn Thomas, who worked as a character supervisor on the Boondocks, as well as a storyboard artist for the likes of The Legend of Korra and a whole slew of DC and Marvel IP, is the reason we have the likes of Cannon Busters and Yasuke. Thomas was the original author of the Cannon Busters comic book series way back in 2005, and in 2014, Thomas began the process of adapting the comic to the screen. There were several hiccups and delays along the way, but in August 2019, Cannon Busters released a 12-episode series on Netflix, directed and written by Thomas, with writing credits being shared with several others. As for the made by Japanese people to be anime requirement, it was co-animated by Satellite, who brought us Fairy Tail, Hellsing Ultimate, and more, along with Yumida Company, responsible for the likes of Tokyo Mew Mew and Digimon Adventure The Last Evolution Kizuna. But between being busy as a storyboard artist on many a beloved series and trying to get Cannon Busters animated, Thomas was learning about Yasuke, a real-life African warrior that fought alongside Oda Nobunaga, one of the great unifiers of 16th century Japan. Thomas collaborated with Studio Mappa to create the Yasuke anime. Yeah, I know, that Mappa, the one that allegedly was working the Jujutsu Kaisen artist to the bone. And full credit to those artists, Yasuke is f***ing beautiful. Grammy winner Flying Lotus executive produced and provided the music for the series, and Oscar nominee Lakeith Stanfield voices the titular character. If you're looking for a historically accurate drama though, this series may miss the mark. I mean, it is a bit of Black and Japanese history in an anime, so it has to have some magic, robots, and kick-ass fight choreography, right? And LaShawn Thomas isn't the only one in the game either. Arthell Isom is another Black American transplant working on anime in Japan. Arthell, per his interview with GQ, was a huge fan of an anime that first caught my eye too, specifically Ghost in the Shell. In fact, I learned in that interview that anime's art director, Hiromasa Ogura, also worked on my favorite steampunk anime, Last Exile. But back to Arthell. After moving to Japan and graduating from Yoyogi Animation Academy in Osaka, he was hired to work at Ogura's studio, Ogura Kobu Atelier. Arthell would go on to open his own studio, Dart Stadio, and if you've seen Pharrell's and Jay-Z's Entrepreneur, you saw Arthell around the 2-minute mark. Or if you watched The Weeknd's Snow Child music video, he directed and produced it. As for his anime credits, how about The Pit from Star Wars Visions? The Nubian vs. Nubian short on The Boys Presents Diabolical, or 2020's Pokemon the Movie Secrets of the Jungle? I mean, what is more anime than Pokemon? And it was Arthell that had the most thoughtful insight I found researching this whole video. In that same GQ article, the interviewer, Alexander Julian Gibson, an excellent writer and artist themselves, posed a question. There's a conversation about how a lot of depictions of black people in anime have been problematic. Do you feel that you have an obligation to make things change? And Arthell's response was, I wouldn't say that I feel that Japan has to hire black people because there's not that many here. I do feel that it's important for designers across the board to do more research into what they're designing, which story to tell, and which characters are going to tell them, and that, I will say, Japan has a responsibility to do. Now that I'm a slightly more knowledgeable person on this subject, what do you think? While all research is done in good faith and to the best of my ability, I am sure I missed out on some amazing creators and artists along the way. Be sure to post who those people are in the comments below. And whether you're new to anime or already of the faith, check out some of my other videos. The almighty algorithm seems to think you'd like this one in particular. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you at the next sermon.